Good evening. May I offer you a life hack? If you are traveling from one city to another, combine your accommodation and transport fees by taking an overnight bus to your destination. It will render you miserable and wretched, but it will save money and build character all in one go. I have no video evidence of our overnight Flixbus, or indeed anything we did on day one, because my phone was submerged in rice, trying its best to heal from lens fog. I did slip it out to document this fancy plant-filled restaurant where we Brexited. We couldn't check into our hostel until 2, so after Brexit, we went to the most touristy thermal bath and soaked in the healing waters, then on to a tea house where Erica caught this moment of me looking like an abject Dust Bowl woman. We finally got to check into our hostel and after a hearty dinner went to bed at 6 p.m. The next day, we were up at 4 so we could go to a rooftop thermal bath and watch the sunrise, and also beat the rest of the tourists there and have it to ourselves. Here you see me giving major supervillain vibes as I survey the filthsome maggots below from my lair. Cheers.
Oh, okay. Shake it.
Long ago, Erica worked at a hostel in Budapest, so she knows all the best stops, namely this hot chocolate place. And when I say hot chocolate, I mean the kind that is barely cut with milk and is essentially a solid. Instead of a menu, the waiter comes over, pulls up a chair, asks you what you want, and you literally pick any flavor combination out of thin air and they will make it for you. I had white chocolate with raspberry and strawberry. After hot chockey, we went to a board game cafe, imbibed more hot drinks, and played an incredibly complicated strategy game, which I gave up on trying to understand around the time the box came off the shelf, and instead amused myself by creating a happy family, seen here gathered around the campfire, perhaps singing a merry song. During this time at the board game cafe, black gangrenous spots began to spread across my phone screen, so we took it to a repair kiosk in the mall, and though the man kindly busted my phone apart and dried out the trapped moisture free of charge, he said there was no point replacing the screen because my phone was probably done for anyway. This was a dark and gruesome news to hear, but that was 2 months ago, and despite my screen looking positively grim, my phone is still working perfectly. We finished our evening with $7 opera tickets. We saw La Fille du Regiment, a comic opera set in World War II, and it was riotous good fun. Back at the hostel, I finally imbibed my sheep cheese I'd carefully transported from Poland.
Working on my night cheese!
We started our day by buying approximately one of everything from this vegan bakery, then strolled along the Danube while listening to the Blue Danube Suite, a glorious and favorite moment of mine from the trip. We toiled up the hill to Fisherman's Bastion, built in honor of some fishermen who defended the city, and it was absolutely stunning. We then crossed a mighty bridge and went to a market, the lower part of which was dedicated to fine and gourmet meatery and cheesery, and the upper level of which was dedicated to souvenirs. After lunch, we split up, and I decided it would be a right laugh if I went and got all my hair cut off. I wandered the streets until I found a hair salon where a very kind and professional lady who didn't speak any English graciously cut my hair based on a Google image I hastily pulled up on my busted phone. Feeling fresh and European, I went to pay, only to discover it was cash only and I didn't have quite enough. So I ran to an ATM, and this is where things get messy. The exchange rate between British pounds and Hungarian forint is 1 to 443. This makes calculating between the two incredibly difficult. Additionally, in Europe, the decimal and comma for an amount such as 1,000 forint and 0 cents are in opposite spots as they would be in America. In conclusion, I accidentally withdrew the equivalent of 600 pounds. Then I went to this coffee house and had a record-breaking bowel movement and a chai latte, and reunited with the others at Joe's friend Anna's apartment for a game night. Please note her amazing glass staircase and our expert puppetry.
Devil, chamber, wine! Emperor's New Groove.
Where is she taking me? Reader, she was taking me to a graveyard. A graveyard full of beautiful and morbid art, no less. 10 out of 10, 5 stars, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We then visited another of Erica's favorite haunts from her Budapest days, this Malaysian restaurant where, instead of giving you a menu, they ask if you want small, medium, or large, then microwave a bunch of stuff and you get what you're given. Also, you've heard of the customer is king, now get ready for... We then hit up another tea house, which are wonderful and bohemian places full of lofts and tunnels, and we nested on our perch and drank tea and played card games. Then we finished out the night at a ruin bar. Our hostel was on Margaret Island, named for the princess who ran away to become a nun, Vibes, and lived in a convent there. There is a strange and random zoo on the island, as well as the ruins of the convent and the grave of Miss Marge herself. Tall bike, tall bike, tall bike. We met up with Joe outside St. Stephen's Basilica, and after some fancy ice cream, went in to see perhaps the greatest tourist attraction of all time, the withered hand of Stephen himself. Stephen was the king who brought Christianity to Hungary in the olden days, and to this day he is considered hot stuff. You put in 20 cents, the box lights up, and you get a full 2 minutes to adore the holy relic. What a deal. Also, during World War II, the hand was hidden in a cave and later found and safely restored to its people by some American Marines.
I'm proud to be an American.
Speaking of the Americans, one of Hungary's traditional dishes is langosh, which is fried dough topped with whatever the heart desires, which 100% seems like something I would have eaten at the county fair in Kentucky.
Okay, so you say, if you want to say that I spit on you, which is quite threatening. Okay.
Ooh, your leg's good now. I don't think I've ever been this high. Wow, that's grace. 10 out of 10.
The next morning, it was back to the bastion to admire the views and serve looks.
Oh no!
Our next stop was the labyrinth, which can scarcely be described. The alleged prison of Count Dracula, the ultimate tourist trap, the place that made Erica the happiest I've ever seen her. Nothing could ever compare.
We just descend into the... Yeah. You make it very, very unsettling.
Oh, Snick. Once and future king.
Can you swing me, please? Yeah.
She's a spider woman. She's a slippery one. We reluctantly resurfaced, lunched, and then it was off to the opulent Gellert thermal baths, where we encountered these stressed cherubs, and I snapped a sediment chunk off their font as a souvenir. We started off day 7 with our usual morning trip to the vegan bakery, then killed some time in this cute coffee shop before meeting up with Erica's friend Rosie to ride the children's railway, which is manned by kids ages 10 to 14 and a few adults to supervise. We rode a vintage tram up to the station, received our tickets from some 12-year-old girls, and once on the train, 2 children and a noble grandpa saluted us as we chugged away.
That's what I think.
Video of the little man, there he goes. Hello, sir. Just doing my job.
Am
Imagine just having a chairlift in your yard. Prime real estate. We took the train to the top of a mountain and took a chairlift down. At the bottom was one of those picture-taking devices, like what we have on roller coasters, but I was unprepared for my photo to be taken, and so Erica insisted on purchasing this souvenir magnet of me looking like a lonely spaceman descending confusedly to Earth. It now resides in a place of honor on my parents' fridge.
I love this land.
Rosie then invited us to hang out at her apartment, and we watched a Hungarian dub of a terrible film about Egyptian gods entirely cast with white people.
And if you press it, and it stops there. And if you press, no, please don't. Okay. Then you go through. Yeah, sometimes it goes through. It's pretty loud as well.
Some more friends, Jasmine and Izzy, joined us for our last few days, and we started our morning at Heroes Square, your garden variety illustrious monument to kings, brave men, and this strong independent woman riding a chariot. This castle was originally built for the World's Fair out of cardboard, but was such a hit that they rebuilt it out of stone. This is a statue of Hungary's most famous historian, known simply as Anonymous, and if you touch his pen, you become a good writer. This is, inscrutably, a bust of Bela Lugosi, who played Count Dracula in the 1930s film.
I want to see my little boy.
Here he comes.
I want to see my little boy.
I know.
Yeah. Got a bear for everywhere.
Oh, look, it's us.
I'm from Vienna. Or is it just us?
I'm from Vienna.
Yes.
And Salzburg.
Yes. Check
After my sweet liquid, I had some savory liquid. Then it was back to the Turkish bath, but it was mid-afternoon and the rooftop pool was jam-packed, and though we found our way in, one can only stew amongst strangers for so long before it stops being fun. A post-bath trip to the tea house, then off to a bistro where the bartender had a distinguished mustache and gave off such a strong vibe of being a war hero from World War I that I immediately fell in love. Well, folks, enjoy these photos as I tell you the tale of the most mysterious woman I have ever encountered. She was one of our hostel roommates for the last few days, and during the day she would either be asleep and snoring heavily, or, if she was awake, either sitting in her bed muttering to herself, or pacing the room muttering to herself. She also had a very tiny stick she tapped against her cheek as she muttered and paced, which was by far my favorite feature. 2 nights in a row, I was awakened in the wee hours by her sitting in bed with her phone, playing Gregorian chanting at full volume. This might have been bearable if it were not the same 4 bars over and over. Eventually, she stopped this and switched to full-volume movie trailers, less sacred, but at least less monotonous. At the time, we did wonder if she needed help and should have been asked if she was okay, but she was nicely dressed and seemed to be taking care of herself well enough, so if she was in a trance, we believe she was there willingly and also was most likely an incredibly powerful being preparing for a mighty feat. Our vegan bakery closed on Sunday, so we Brexited at the coffee shop next door. For lunch, Izzy, Jasmine, and I got traditional Hungarian goulash, then we went to a flea market where I bought these rings, and for some reason chose to video them while perusing the ugliest stuff in the place. I promise they had some very fine wares, including old Soviet propaganda pins. We also explored this cool shop that sold both vintage and original pieces made by up-and-coming designers. Our afternoon was spent at a stained glass museum, a beautiful and peaceful land. Here we are snooping on the elites at Budapest's only expensive restaurant, the New York Cafe.
Let me in! Let me in!
This pedestrian tunnel had a mattress neatly wedged within, creating a makeshift and brief bouncy castle. In the evening, we had a lovely vegan dinner, then I went to a coffee shop and FaceTimed the folks at home. We changed hostels this day due to availability, not for terror of the mysterious woman, and our new hostel was in this very cool old building downtown. Another day, another thermal bath, featuring this terrifying lobby centaur behaving menacingly toward these cherubs.
Option for in the mornings, it was like £3 for 3 hours in the morning, and now they're closed till next year. You can get a yearly pass.
After a nice long soak, we got coffee and snacks, and soon after it was Langosh time again, followed by a river cruise. I was hesitant to agree to this because I envisioned standing for an hour on the deck of a boat being buffeted by the squallish winds off the river and generally suffering. But the whole event was below deck, extremely luxurious, and included a free glass of Prosecco. Additionally, we saw this bus-boat hybrid, which my brain simply could not process and felt forbidden to see. We'd heard tell of a donut festival round these parts, but though we lurked around until it was supposed to start, there were only a few stalls and only one that sold donuts. They were delicious, but that's hardly the point. While walking about, we encountered these boys playing marbles and this statue of Columbo confusedly inspecting this chubby dog. Sometime when I'm hungry.
I have a piece of salt.
The bloggers at work here.
Ooh, which one? I'm gonna get a pink one.
That's huge. I'm gonna get a modest piece.
Enjoyed this affirmation while dumping out in the cafe bathroom, then it was off for another solo wonder. I hung out in front of the Parliament building, basking in the sunlight and feeling blessed, then headed to watch the sunset at Fisherman's Bastion, but it was overcrowded with girls getting shots for the gram that looked way better than me, so I became quite wretched and moped in a grunchily fashion back down the hill. I wanted to check out this church, and other people were going inside, but as I followed them, I realized they were walking with great purpose and not the meandering gait of tourists, and that is how I accidentally attended Hungarian Mass. Obviously, I had no idea what was going on because everything was in Hungarian, but at one point we went up to get communion from the priest, and at first I was too afraid, but then I was like, no, this is my only chance to get communion from a Hungarian priest, and I have to seize the moment. For dinner, we patronized Erica's favorite business owner, whom she knows simply as Falafel Man, and this was the first time I ever saw her cry, so happy was she to be in his establishment again. We gave him a very large tip, and in his gratitude, he presented us with these delectable coconut sweets for the road. What a relief. Ooh, is there more? What's in here? Some ribs. Spooky. There's like a, ew. There's like a, see his hand? A little scary corpse man. Same. Practice your spotting.
You're whatting?
This is how you can turn without getting dizzy when you're dancing.
Oh, yeah. We could do it a few times.
Oh, this is so... On our final day after this Instagrammable breakfast, we wandered the city listening to a 1970s rock opera about the life of St. Stephen, entertained ourselves on these spinny chairs, and then, well stocked with vegan pastries for the journey, it was time to go home.